Okay, so first off, I just want to say thank you so much for the reception I got from the Daisy video. I think it was probably my most successful video release ever, and that was very exciting. So yeah, thank you. I want to kind of build off of the last video a little bit. Like, despite how freakishly long my content has gotten, I do try and have some sense of pacing, which means I can't always go off on the tangents I want to. I only briefly mentioned Ferncloud and her ultimate demise in the last video, despite how badly I wanted to go off on an unhinged rant. And then a cool person in the comments encouraged me to make a video about it, and I said it once and I'll say it again. If you encourage me to do a video I was considering doing anyways, it will probably happen. So here we are. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. I'm gonna try to get this out in December. Will I succeed? Who knows? This one isn't going to be as long or as in-depth as Daisy's, mostly for the reason that a lot of what I said about Daisy could be applied to Ferncloud. Ferncloud also stayed in the nursery long after her kids grew up. She also rarely hunted and fought, instead choosing to stay in camp and raise the clan's kids. So pretty much all my arguments about how Daisy has a purpose in the clan can be applied to Ferncloud too. In fact, Ferncloud was so appreciated that she had a kit named after her after she died. Lionblaze and Cinderheart had a litter and named each kit after a loved one that they lost in the battle with the Dark Forest. Lionblaze named one after his sister, Cinderheart after her mother, but neither Lionblaze nor Cinderheart were related to Ferncloud. They were raised by her though. Lionblaze especially was nursed by her, so it's a nice gesture that they saw her as family and that her work in the nursery was very obviously appreciated by the cats that she brought up. Ferncloud has literally been around since the beginning of the series. She was born into ThunderClan in the first book, became an apprentice in the fourth, and became a warrior sometime after the events of the Darkest Hour. After this point, Ferncloud is always shown in the nursery. I don't think she's ever been listed as a warrior. Firestar's Quest she's in the nursery. Midnight she's in the nursery. She's nursing kits in both of these books, but by Sunset, her only surviving kits at the time are out of the nursery, but she's still listed there. Meaning that this is technically the first book where she's officially a perma-queen, barely edging out Daisy since Daisy was still nursing at this point. And a Shadow and River clan basically confirms that Ferncloud spent barely any time as a warrior. When she runs into Feathertail, she's all like, "Guess what? I got my warrior name, and Dustpelt and I are going to have babies!" Not to mention that according to Firestar's Quest, she has kits before Brambleclaw even gets his warrior name. Meaning she was doing warrior duties for, at most, just a few months. And this actually has some pretty disturbing implications when put into context with the first series. I've mentioned a few times that I was dumb and accidentally started the series with The New Prophecy. The first book I read was Midnight. So my introduction to Ferncloud and her mate Dustpelt was when they were both adults and had just had their second litter together. And I thought they were a sweet couple. Dustpelt was definitely a very stubborn and grumpy character, but he was very kind and loving to Ferncloud. He fretted over her and seemed to really care about her and their children. So imagine my absolute horror when I went back and read the first series and saw that they got together when she was a child and he was an adult. Well, okay, to be fair, they didn't officially become mates until she was a warrior, apparently, but Dustpelt was definitely interested in her when she was an apprentice. A brand new apprentice, too. Within 30 pages of her leaving the nursery, he's already shown to be weirdly attached to her. And look, I understand that based on the way the clan system is set up, some age gaps are inevitable. I mean, this is a closed society where the members aren't allowed to breed with outsiders, and you reach adulthood after 1 year. If you weren't born around the same time as anyone else, you aren't going to have a lot of options. But it's not really the age gap that's the problem with Dustpelt and Ferncloud. I mean, Brackenfur and Sorreltail have a much bigger age gap. Brackenford was literally an adult when Sorreltail was born, and that's impossible to miss because there's an entire storyline in The Darkest Hour that revolves around him being a warrior and her being a kid. But I have never seen a single person complain about Brackenford and Sorreltail, and honestly, I don't have a problem with them either, because they got together as adults. Even if Dustpelt and Ferncloud didn't officially get together until Ferncloud was a warrior, an adult waiting for a child to reach legal age and then immediately impregnating them is, well, it's gross. And I don't care if they're cats. First of all, the authors have said that the cats are practically human, so that argument is completely moot. But the apprentices are pretty much treated as children anyways. Older children, of course, like they aren't in the nursery anymore, but they're pretty much expected to be completely obedient to the warriors and usually aren't even allowed out without a warrior present. Vicky Holmes has even said that they're meant to be teenagers. This is wild when we take some other books into account, but that's an entire other can of worms. Honestly, I could go on about the age gaps in this series for hours, and maybe someday I will. But when it comes to Ferncloud in particular, it's pretty gross. Even as a child, it immediately soured all goodwill I had for Dustpelt. And what's even more wild is that everyone is aware of Dustpelt's affection for this child, and they are charmed by it. The main character, the point of view character, is charmed by it. What about the apprentices? Darkstripe asked. Do you want them to come with us? Fernpaw's too young to get involved. I agree, Dustpelt mewed swiftly. For all his tension, Fireheart had to suppress a purr of amusement to hear Dustpelt betraying the soft spot he felt for Darkstripe's apprentice. Though he praised his own apprentice equally, the warmth in Dustpelt's eyes was all for Fernpaw. Fireheart managed to hide his amusement. The brown tabby warrior's affection for her was no secret. They even said that she was too young to do stuff and then followed that up with, oh, Dustpelt likes her. What the hell? There's also the fact that Dustpelt is her uncle, which I'm not really counting as a point against him necessarily because that's a retcon, and a poorly thought out one at that. Like that time that Vicky Holmes accidentally made Graystripe's parents full-blooded siblings. The authors don't fake out the family trees. It was an accident. Alright, but it's mostly kind of disturbing to me that the authors have created a universe where the characters are supposed to be very human-like, but also it's totally fine if adults are crushing on and pursuing minors. That's a really messed up thing to have in a children's story especially. It could very easily give kids the idea that it's romantic if an older person likes you and is waiting for you to become an adult so that they can be with you. It's not, by the way. It's creepy. Stay away from people like that. Again, this isn't the only time the series has done this, and they arguably do it way, way worse later on, but this is the first time it happens, and it does kind of set a precedent for the relationship sown throughout the rest of the series. So while Ferncloud doesn't stay a warrior for very long, she does have a very eventful apprenticeship. Even aside from the Dustpelt stuff, she's involved in a lot of events that happen on the latter end of the first arc. Her mother, Brindleface, is murdered by Tigerstar and left as bait for the dog pack, and Fernpaw and her brother Ashpaw help to lure the dog pack over the side of the gorge in order to avenge their mother. She's also singled out to help Cinderpelt heal the clans during the Battle with Blood Clan, being chosen in particular for her compassionate nature, which is kinda nice. This series does have the tendency to assign traits to minor characters with no personality when they eventually decide to make them part of the story. Ferncloud's brother Ashfur is probably the most extreme version of this, but Ferncloud was portrayed as sweet from the very beginning, or at least as soon as she was old enough to have a name and personality. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, Ferncloud and Daisy aren't the first nursery queens. Again, I don't know if Speckletail was nursing kits the entire first series or not, but Golden Flower was mentioned in Midnight to be staying in the nursery to help Ferncloud with her kits. However, this is mostly due to her age. Golden Flower is getting old and is choosing to spend her last months before retirement in the nursery before going to the Elder's Den. But Ferncloud is young and fit. She went through an entire apprenticeship and earned her warrior name. She did the training, and in that time hunted and fought for her clan. This immediately differentiates her from Daisy. Daisy didn't like fighting. She felt uncomfortable with clan culture and stayed in the nursery because it was the only place she felt wanted and like she might be useful. Ferncloud was born into clan culture. She was trained in it. She's comfortable with it. If she wanted to, she could have gone back to warrior's duties. She could have hunted and fought alongside her mate, her brothers, her friends, her children, but she didn't go back. She chose to stay in the nursery long after her children aged out of it. Ferncloud, at only a few years old, chose to spend the rest of her life filling this pretty unconventional role, despite being fully capable of being a warrior. And I think that's meaningful. But there is an element of Ferncloud's character and possibly her decision to stay that is often overlooked. And I also forgot about it until I started working on this video. So Ferncloud had a rough go of it in the first half of the new prophecy. In Midnight, she has 5 kids, 2 older sons and a newborn litter consisting of 2 girls and a boy. Both of her daughters, Larch Kit and Holly Kit, starved to death in the old forest, and one of her older sons, Screwpaw, is run over by a bulldozer. Ferncloud is very understandably distressed by this. She's struggling to keep not only herself, but also her last remaining newborn kitten alive. And she is just so traumatized and racked with grief that she can barely function. While this is going on, Leafpaw is captured by the humans and meets a kitty pet named Cody, who comforts and keeps Leafpaw sane before they escape and go to ThunderClan. They arrive just as Holly Kit dies, and Cody is immediately at Ferncloud's side, comforting her and taking care of Birch Kit. This surprises pretty much everyone, and when asked, Cody says this: "I thought I might be able to help. I lost a litter once." A whole litter? That's so sad. They didn't die. My house folks sent them away to new homes, but I felt the loss as badly. This pretty quickly devolved into a conversation about the bond between house cat and owner. But the important bit here is that Cody is a mother who lost her children and is able to empathize with the pain that Ferncloud is going through. And she helps out a lot. She makes Ferncloud take her medicine and comforts Birch Kit, and for several chapters, she's seen hanging out with Birch Kit while Ferncloud rests. She doesn't stick around long, of course. Once the clan decides to head to the lake, she says her goodbyes and goes back to her owners. But in the short amount of time she was in ThunderClan, she definitely made a difference. Not just in ThunderClan, but in ShadowClan too, as she ends up taking care of the ShadowClan kits after they flee their camp. Ferncloud is said to be doing much better by the time Cody leaves, and Birch Kit is upset that Cody wasn't able to come with them. So Ferncloud, before becoming a permaqueen herself, actually benefits from having an extra cat in the nursery taking care of her. She knows how it feels to be panicked, grieving, distressed, all while trying to keep it together and care for your children, and how relieving it is to have someone there to help. And then 2 books later, a distressed single mother shows up at ThunderClan with her barely alive children, and Ferncloud immediately swoops in and starts caring for them. Now, there's never any direct connection made between Cody and Daisy in the text. I'm actually pretty sure that Cody is never mentioned again after Dawn, but they are strikingly similar characters, right? 2 mother cats who live with 2 legs come to ThunderClan and help in the nursery. Even their backstories are similar. Cody's entire litter was taken from her by the 2 legs, and Daisy is fleeing because the 2 legs were going to take her litter away. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. I don't know. But first of all, I do try to give the writers as much credit as I can, and Cody didn't have to be part of the narrative. Cody didn't have to come to ThunderClan and help Ferncloud. They did make that decision for a reason, right? And it is kind of interesting that a cat who lives with 2 legs, whose children was taken, helps Ferncloud, and then Ferncloud helps a cat who lived with the two legs whose children were almost taken. It's like Ferncloud is paying forward the kindness that Cody showed her, that she knows firsthand how relieving it is for someone to help you when you're going through a hard time and have children to take care of. And the thing is, we don't know for sure whether or not Ferncloud went back to warrior duties between her first two litters. She isn't mentioned as being the nursery at the end of Firestar's quest, so it's entirely possible that she did. Maybe the reason that she chose to stay in the nursery after Birchpaw was apprenticed was because she wanted to help take care of Daisy. Maybe in paying back the kindness bestowed to her by a random stranger, she ended up finding out that she actually really liked helping in the nursery and that it was her true calling in life. Also, I don't know why Goldenflower wasn't helping Ferncloud and Dawn. She was specifically said to be helping in the nursery, and then the writers forgot about it. Someone commented I should make a Goldenflower video, so I'll actually do it. I have some things I want to say. Whatever the case, though, Ferncloud stays in the nursery through sunset, but then in the site, which takes place something like 7 months later, she has another litter. And this is where the mockery starts to come in. There had been cats at this point who had 2 litters. Goldenflower had 2. Tigerstar did, but he wasn't involved for the second one at all. Dappletail tells a story about her first litter, meaning she had at least 2. Speckletail probably did. There was an implication in the first series that the cats were constantly having litters. It was just never really shown. Also, Blue Star's prophecy hadn't come out yet, so all the cats in that book, including Speckletail, who had multiple litters, didn't exist at this point. Nowadays, 2 litters is pretty common, but back then, it wasn't. Or at least it wasn't shown directly. And 3 litters is even rarer. I think out of all the queens, only Snowbird and Ferncloud have had 3 litters. And Snowbird didn't even have her first until Outcast, 2 books after the site. So at this point, Ferncloud had the most canon children by far. And the fans went wild. She was constantly called a baby factory. Jokes about her popping out kid after kid after kid were extraordinarily common. People hated Daisy, but Daisy only had 2 litters, which was normal. Ferncloud apparently crossed the threshold for too many kids, and people made fun of her for years. And this mockery, no joke, got her killed. So in the last hope, the Dark Forest cats attack and Ferncloud is killed by Broken Star while protecting the nursery. Now on the surface, this is a fitting end for Ferncloud. She loved kits, she loved the nursery, it makes sense that she'd go down protecting it. From author Vicky Holmes, you have yourselves to blame for Ferncloud's demise. I've had a lot of complaints over the years about the way Ferncloud skulks in the nursery, churning out kits, and never taking part in anything dangerous or difficult outside the camp. Well, all along, I knew she was capable of fighting as fiercely as any warrior when it came to protecting the young of the clan, so I put her into the thick of the battle to defend the nursery. And she got killed! Poor Ferncloud. First of all, Ferncloud churning out kits and never hunting or fighting for herself is specifically called out as the reason for the fans' mockery, and as an extension, the reason that Ferncloud dies. Again, we went over this in the last video. The clan is totally cool with the nursery queens not hunting or fighting. That is a non-issue. But the churning out kits in particular is interesting because at the point of her death, 2 entire series had gone by and Ferncloud hadn't had any kits. Foxleap and Icecloud were born before Power and Free started, and then Ferncloud never had another litter again. This is like calling a middle-aged woman with adult children a baby factory. What are you even going on about? And the idea of someone churning out kids in general really bothers me too. Society expects you to have children, but God forbid you have too many. And what too many is definitely differs from person to person. I remember my neighbor once told me that he'd never want to have as many kids as my mom had, and she had 3. The clans don't seem to have a standard for too many kids. No one ever says, haha, maybe you shouldn't have another litter. The clan's getting a little overpopulated. Kids are always seen as a blessing, unless Blue Star's being angsty or there's a forbidden romance going on. But the fans apparently decided that 7 is too many. And yeah, comparatively, 7 is more than most of the characters have. But Ferncloud isn't the only cat to have that many kids. One other cat in ThunderClan has had just as many kids as Ferncloud.
The girl went and got herself pregnant.
Oh, she got herself pregnant.
Ferncloud has had the same mate her entire life. Literally, almost her entire life, unfortunately. But yeah, all of her children have the same father. Dustpelt has made just as many babies as Ferncloud has. But does he ever get called a baby machine? Does he ever get accused of churning out kits? I have not once, ever, in my entire life, seen anyone make fun of Dustpelt for having a lot of kits. But it happened to his wife enough that the offers took notice and killed her. And that is ridiculous. That is absolutely absurd. Do you want to know who in the series actually seems to have the most amount of children? That I know of anyways. I mean, there's 1,300 characters in this series. There's always the chance I missed something. It's not Snowbird. I mean, at least probably not. Like, she does have more than Ferncloud with 9 children at the point of me writing this. But no, she might have been beaten out by Skystar. Skystar had 2 kids with Brightstream who unfortunately died, then 3 with Storm, then 3 with Starflower. Then he adopted one, and last we see Skystar, Starflower is pregnant with his kids again. So he had at least 9 kids, probably more, and a total of 4 litters, which I believe is the record. And yes, most of them died, but that's true of Ferncloud too. I always assumed that the reason she had the 3rd litter was because the 2nd one was nearly obliterated. She lost 3 children over the course of just a few months. I wouldn't blame her for wanting another chance at raising children in a peaceful environment, especially since she now had Daisy to help her. I've also seen a theory that Ferncloud had the 3rd litter because she caught on to Leafpool and Squirrelflight's little scheme and knew that they would need someone to nurse Leafpool's kids. And from a writing perspective, this is probably the actual reason the authors had Ferncloud have a 3rd litter. Someone had to nurse Lion, Jay, and Holly after all, and Ferncloud was already there. And despite Skystar being a baby machine in his own right, he never gets mentioned when it comes to cats with a lot of children. It's always the female characters. For example, I couldn't help but notice that while the wiki goes out of its way to point out that Snowbird has had the most amount of kits, they say nothing of the sort on Scorchfur's page. Despite Scorchfur being her mate, and those also being his kits, he has the exact same amount of kits as Snowbird does. But doesn't say anything about him having the most amount. But it takes 2 to tango, and if Ferncloud is a baby machine, then so is her husband. For some reason, when it comes to mocking and punishing characters, it's always the female character who has to suffer. Ferncloud dies for having too many babies. Sorreltail is punished because she is too happy. Yes, actually, like that's real. Yes, Sorreltail has had kind of a tough life, hasn't she? But she has her pure and constant love for Brackenfur. Happy relationship, yawn, to keep her happy. Ha! I will punish her for boring romance. Why does Sorreltail have to be punished because both she and Brackenfur are too happy? Brackenfur is just as guilty of being happy as she is, but no, she specifically says that she will punish her for being too happy. Now, as you're probably aware, sometime after this quote was said, or written or whatever, Sorreltail was killed. She was actually killed in the same battle that killed Ferncloud. She was in the nursery with her second litter at the time too, just to add insult to injury. Now, whether or not Sorreltail was killed as a punishment for being too happy, it's hard to say. This quote was from several years before Sorreltail actually died. Whether or not we can say the quote even applies here is up for debate. However, the thing that kind of interests me about Sorreltail's death was that it was a retcon. That famous quote about Ferncloud's death comes from a statement that Vicky Holmes made after The Last Hope came out, where she explains why she killed all the ThunderClan cats who died in the battle with the Dark Forest. Sorreltail is not mentioned at all in this statement, despite the fact that she canonically died in the battle with the Dark Forest. This is probably because she was mentioned as being alive and well at the end of The Last Hope. However, all the books that came out after claimed that Sorreltail was actually killed in the battle with the Dark Forest. Dovewing's silence showed that she was gravely injured and hid that fact to be with her kits, and then she bled to death. However, at the very end of the battle, we see her holding back Sandstorm. Sandstorm leaped forward, hissing with rage, but Sorreltail reached out and heaved her back by her scruff. "You can't change his destiny, Sandstorm." Does that seem like someone who's on the verge of bleeding to death? Sandstorm is a muscular, seasoned warrior desperate to save her mate, and she heaved her back. Vicky clearly didn't intend on Sorreltail dying in The Last Hope because she would have been listed in the statement that she made. So why did she end up killing her in retrospect? Why did she go back and kill this nursing mother? Because she was too happy? It's very strange. And I do get the intent behind Ferncloud's final sacrifice. I get the idea of throwing her into the thick of the battle to protect the one thing she loves the most. It's strange to have this moment, though, where she's supposed to be proving herself, and then she dies. They had her prove herself by losing the fight. You could easily have her prove herself and live, But alright, if they really wanted her to die here, it could work. I could definitely buy Ferncloud giving her life to protect the tiny lives she cared for so much. After all, didn't she already give her life to the nursery? But this wasn't some big, awesome fight where Ferncloud fought herself to the point of exhaustion and took down both her and Broken Star in a blaze of glory. She jumps at Broken Star's throat, misses, he grabs her, bites her throat, and she dies. The entire thing is only a few sentences long. This is the only time she's ever showed fighting. She's implied to have been fighting the entire battle. She's shown covered in blood and all that, but this is the only moment that we see her actually fight someone. And she lasts about 5 seconds before she's overpowered, dragged out, killed in one hit, and then Yellow Fang has to run in and save the day. And do you know what this scene is nearly identical to? There's a part in Into the Wild where ThunderClan is invaded by ShadowClan and an elder named Rosetail is left to guard the nursery. Firepaw witnesses her being dragged out of the nursery, killed in one hit, and then Yellow Fang has to run in and save the day. It's basically the exact same scene, even down to who was attacking. Now, Broken Star wasn't actually the one attacking the nursery in Into the Wild, but it was his deputy Blackfoot who he sent to attack. And Rosetail's death wasn't supposed to be really empowering and prove the haters wrong. She was killed because she was weak and Blackfoot was strong. And that Ferncloud's big moment to prove herself went down the exact same way as, well, it's sad. And this could have been really cool. Broken Star is an excellent choice to fight Ferncloud. If Broken Star is known for one thing, it's for being a child murderer. He directly killed Bright Flower's 2 kits and framed Yellow Fang for the crime. He was apprenticing kits too early and leading them into battle. He worked his 2 apprentices to death. He is responsible for the deaths of many, many young cats. Contrast that with Ferncloud, who was responsible for giving many life, through not only giving birth, but also raising them as if they were her own. A maternal figure versus a child murderer. It makes sense, and it could be really cool, even if this was Ferncloud's time to go. Her going down and dragging Broken Star with her, ensuring with her life that this monster could never harm another child, would be so meaningful. It's both a show of maternal instinct and strength, of a mother bear making the ultimate sacrifice for her cubs. But instead, she gets killed immediately, and someone else has to finish the job. It's a missed opportunity, and it's really just a shame. Ferncloud was done dirty, both by fans and then by the authors, who decided to listen to the fans and get rid of her. I wish they didn't use her big empowering moment to kill her, and if they really wanted to do that, I wish it really did empower her. I wish it actually felt like a noble sacrifice and didn't just feel like a weak cat getting instantly killed by a stronger cat. But that's just what we get, I guess. At least Ferncloud is shown to be proud of how she spent her life after she dies. That's nice, I guess. But it's still kind of a downer. Especially since almost the rest of Ferncloud's children die, really quickly after she does. Birdsfall is the only one left, and some of her grandchildren died too, those being Daisy's second litter. I'm glad Ferncloud's grandchildren have taken the role of main characters in the story. Even her great-grandchildren have been in the limelight lately. Meanwhile, I'm living day to day terrified that Daisy's grandchildren are gonna die on her and her entire bloodline's just gonna be wiped out. There's no danger of that happening with Ferncloud, I think. But still, the entire way her character was just obliterated because fans decide to make fun of a woman for having too many kids will just never not infuriate me. And that they didn't even bother to make it a meaningful scene is just an insult. Ferncloud was a sweet lady who went through a lot of pain, but ended up doing a lot of good in her life. And she deserved much, much better. Alright, thank you for watching. This was not a planned video. I at no point was ever considering making a video about Ferncloud until, I saw that comment and I was like, yeah, maybe I should. And I thought it would be nice to try to get another video out before the end of the year, considering how bad I did with putting videos out this year. I'm actually kind of liking this way I'm doing the Warrior videos, so, I think I'm gonna continue it, and it lets me draw more, which I've been missing doing that. So yeah, I guess I'll just keep going with this. I definitely had an idea for what the next one's gonna be, but who knows? Things could change. So anyway, like and subscribe. I guess I'll see you next time. Hopefully it's soon, and I don't disappear for several months again. Goodbye.